Kerry Bouillon. Brother Kerry was subject to 2 years of house arrest on the basis of secret courts and evidence. Upon his release, after being completely exonerated, he went on to work with many organisations, including Cage, Amnesty, and won the 2011 Young Activist of the Year Award from Liberty. He is here today in personal capacity to talk about criminalising ideas pertaining to political Islam today and not speaking for any group or organisation. Thank you, Kerry.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sorry, I'm losing my voice, as always happens whenever I'm at one of Nadia's events, and I don't know why. Nothing to do with stress. How am I meant to follow let's overturn the world order and destroy everything? Brilliant. I'm on an amazing panel here with brilliant academics, and I'm a grassroots activist. So I'm not going to be speaking about brilliant academics and these sorts of things. I'm going to be talking about the reality on the ground at the moment when you're out there and forced through necessity of the situation to talk about issues relating to Muslims, especially within the public sphere. So what do I mean by that? I mean that often now, especially whenever you're doing any sort of work on anti-racism or calling for equal rights for Muslims, especially in the context of the war on terror, you have to first establish your credentials and establish yourself as a good Muslim, as a moderate Muslim, as one of those ones that we don't have to worry about. And in my own experience with interviews on certain Murdoch media, that came in the form of being forced to make sure I make a condemnation before going on and being allowed to give my opinion. Being forced to prove my humanity and prove a basic humanity before an opinion is valued. Now, quite apart from the fact that the racist basis for that Muslims are seen to need to prove themselves and need to qualify themselves before being given the same space and room to discuss ideas as everybody else. How does that all play into this concept of decolonising the Caliphate? Because for me, decolonisation is about taking down and destroying racism, giving people the space to discuss their own ideas in their own context. And as Nadeem put so well, judging those ideas from their own basis rather than from the basis of other people. I'm blessed to have followed such brilliant speakers that have already made such incredible points. What I think that the problem that we have at the moment is whether it comes down to condemning things that are obviously heinous crimes because you need to prove that you're a human being, or being asked before the conversation begins what your view is on a caliphate and what your view is on unity amongst Muslims. These are all problematic things for people to even be asking. And the reason that they are asked is to question your humanity and to block you in, so that then this pejorative term of Islamist can be applied to you. This term that really has no meaning outside of shutting down discussion and closing down room for debate, which is exactly the opposite of the thing that we need to do in a time when people are more divided and further apart than they ever have been before. At a time when we need to be opening up debate and not closing it down, not shutting down the space for honest and frank discussion. If people believe in various and different forms of the caliphate, then we need to have that discussion. That needs to be something that can be had in an open space. Otherwise, what we have is organisations that are based not very far away from here in reputable outlets, as we saw last week, saying that ISIS are a blessing in disguise because it allows people to see what the true Islam is. Now, these very, very well funded and very well received groups by the neocons and government organisations that get a huge amount of space in the media are allowed to put that forward, but if someone were to disagree, they automatically put themselves in the category of Islamist, where they can be silenced. So from my own experience and from one of the organisations that I worked with, Muazzam Beg was asked a question about the Caliphate. His answer was a purely rhetorical one of, Well, if Europe can work towards ever closer union, and if Europe with numerous languages and religions and cultures is allowed to have a work towards a single currency, single monetary union and trade, why is it such a bad thing for Muslims to have the same rights, the same right to call for those things? Even that as a theoretical question was enough then to tarnish him and to attack him and any organisation linked to him with this pejorative term of Islamist. We are living now in a world where even merely having an identity outside of the Western secular liberal is problematic for people who want to silence the debate. And we need to open up that space. And that's for me what this decolonisation is about. And I'm obviously speaking in much more blunt and simple terms than my esteemed colleagues here, but that's what we need to be using this sort of space to create. Because as long as we don't have the space to discuss these things in an open manner without being criticised for it, we do not have the space to express ourselves. And as people are not allowed to express themselves, they will be forced into situations that are far more dangerous because of that lack of expression, that lack of freedom. I say that the Bethnal Green girls who went off to join ISIS, their whole experience of life as 15-year-old girls at the time was one of a post-9/11 experience of Islamophobia and not feeling able to express themselves. And therefore they were more at risk and more open to the false claims of an organisation that murders and decapitates people because of the lack of freedom to discuss and honestly critique these ideas and have an honest and frank discussion about them. You may or may not agree with groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir and their call, but their voice is essential. It has to be had. And the idea that we can just shut down conversations because we don't like the views of the other side, whichever side of the debate you're on, if your ideas are the strongest, you'll win out. And we should all be confident in our ideas and challenge them at every step of the way, without labelling people with pejoratives. I'd like to sort of wrap up by saying thank you to Nadia for inviting me to this event, and thank you to the MSA for hosting this event, and say that going forward we all need to be thinking about how we as people can take back our identities, take back the strength, and take back the power to reclaim words and powers and identities that are ours. I don't have a position and a statement on what the Caliphate is and what it would look like, because that's not my job. But I do believe that unless we maintain and fight for a free and open society where people are not just pushed to the wayside because of a belief and a concept which is, to be honest, in practical terms, no different than a McCarthyite push against people who believe in a communist ideal, which we would all say that you can't ban people for those sorts of thoughts. Until we are fighting back against that, we're undermining freedom for every single person all across this country. Thank you very much.